A corroded lump of bronze lay forgotten on a museum shelf for decades. It was pulled from the wreck of an ancient Roman ship, dismissed as a piece of broken clockwork from a much later era. That unassuming object is now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, the world's oldest known computer. By the end of this, you will understand how a 2,000-year-old machine could predict cosmic events with stunning precision. We are about to unravel how a storm, a shipwreck, and a single stubborn gear rewrote our entire understanding of ancient science. What you believe is still waiting to be discovered from the ancient world. The year was 1900, and a group of sponge divers were returning home to the island of Simi. Their season had been tough, and the Aegean Sea was turning against them. A sudden, violent storm forced their small boats to seek shelter near the rocky, uninhabited island of Antikythera. Waiting out the weather, one of the divers, Elias Stadiotis, decided to make a test dive in the calmer waters of the island's cove. He plunged into the deep, expecting to see the familiar, barren seabed. Instead, he found himself hovering over a scene of ancient chaos. His eyes adjusted to the dim blue light, and shapes began to emerge from the silt. A ghostly arm of marble reached out from the darkness, then a leg, then the serene, sightless face of a statue. All around him, the ocean floor was littered with bronze and marble figures, amphorae, and the shattered timbers of a massive ship. In a panic, he surfaced, gasping about a heap of naked, dead women on the seabed. The captain, Dimitrios Kondos, dove down himself to confirm the story and returned clutching a bronze arm torn from a statue 2,000 years old. They had accidentally discovered one of the richest shipwrecks of the ancient world. The Greek government quickly organized a salvage operation, the first major underwater archaeology effort in history. Over the next several months, divers risked their lives, working at dangerous depths without proper equipment to bring up a breathtaking treasure. They recovered stunning bronze statues, including the famed Antikythera youth, delicate glassware, fine pottery, gold jewelry, and coins that dated the ship's final voyage to around 60 or 70 years before the Common Era. This was a Roman cargo vessel, likely carrying plunder from the Greek islands back to Rome, a floating museum of classical art. Amid all this splendor, one find was utterly unimpressive. It was a lump of green, heavily corroded bronze about the size of a large book, encrusted with 2 millennia of sea life. It seemed to have gears embedded in it, but to the salvagers, it looked like a piece of a modern clock or nautical instrument that must have fallen into the wreck much later. It was not art, it was not obviously jewelry, it was just a corroded mechanism. With no context to understand it, the strange lump was catalogued, boxed up with other minor metal objects, and sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. There it was placed on a shelf, a curious but forgotten footnote to a magnificent discovery of statues. For nearly half a century, the world's most sophisticated ancient technology sat in storage, its secrets locked inside a shell of marine corrosion, waiting for someone to look past the tarnish and see the genius within. That forgotten lump of bronze would not stay silent for long. In 1905, an archaeologist named Valerios Stais was studying the Antikythera finds in the museum. He was examining this particular piece of corrosion, turning it over in his hands when a sliver of sunlight caught an edge of metal. He peered closer, brushing away some of the crust. There, embedded in the rock like green lump, was the unmistakable shape of a gear wheel, a perfectly formed toothed bronze gear. His mind must have raced. Gears of this precision were the hallmark of complex machines like clocks, but the shipwreck was ancient Roman, from over 1,000 years before the earliest known European mechanical clocks. This was not just an oddity, it was an impossibility. Stais published his observation, suggesting the object was some kind of ancient astronomical device. The reaction from the academic world was swift and dismissive. It was met with a wall of polite disbelief. the prevailing wisdom was absolute. The ancient Greeks were philosophers and artists, brilliant with geometry and astronomy, but they were not mechanical engineers. Complex geared mechanisms simply did not fit the historical timeline. Technology, it was believed, progressed in a straight line. The high point of ancient mechanics was the simple water wheel or the elementary gear train of a mill. A device with multiple interlocking bronze gears implied a level of technical sophistication that belonged to the Renaissance, not to classical antiquity. Most scholars concluded it had to be a later object that somehow fell into the wreck, perhaps a medieval astrolabe or even an 18th century navigational clock. The idea that it was genuinely 2,000 years old was considered a fascinating but embarrassing mistake. So the mechanism was set aside again, labeled an anachronism, a ghost from the wrong future trapped in the ancient past. It became a century-long puzzle, a quiet challenge to everything we thought we knew about the trajectory of human invention, waiting for the right minds and the right technology to see what was truly inside. The true nature of the mechanism began to reveal itself only when the crust of corrosion was carefully removed. What emerged were not just random scraps, but the shattered pieces of a meticulously engineered machine. The largest surviving section is known as Fragment A. It is a compact, dense block of bronze, roughly the size of a hardcover book, but much thicker. On one face, you can see the remains of a circular dial, marked with fine, precise graduations. More astonishingly, peering into its broken side is like looking into the guts of a modern wristwatch. Layer upon layer of thin, interlocking bronze gear wheels are stacked inside, some as small as a coin, each with perfectly machined triangular teeth. These gears are not crude castings, they are works of precision engineering designed to mesh and turn with minimal friction. Fragment B is smaller, a plate that shows another large dial, this one divided into the 12 signs of the Greek zodiac. Fragment C is more fragile, containing sections of yet more gearing and crucial pieces of text. In total, there are 82 separate fragments recovered, from large structural plates to tiny, individual gear teeth no bigger than a grain of rice. But the real shock came from the surfaces of these bronze plates. They are covered in text, thousands of microscopic Greek letters engraved into the metal. This is not decoration, it is a user manual, a technical guide explaining the machine's functions and the cosmic cycles it models. The front plate had at least 2 large dials with pointers, likely showing the positions of the sun and moon against the backdrop of the zodiac. The back plate was even more complex, with a spiral dial and several smaller subsidiary dials. And here lies one of the mechanism's most breathtaking secrets, buried in its gear train. Researchers identified a very special assembly, a gear mounted on another gear, designed to account for a subtle irregularity in the moon's motion. This is a differential gear, a component that allows for the calculation of differences in speed. In the modern world, differential gears are what allow the wheels of a car to turn at different speeds when going around a corner. Before the Antikythera mechanism was understood, the invention of the differential gear was credited to clockmakers in the 16th century, nearly 1,400 years later. Its presence in this ancient wreck was not just surprising, it was a chronological impossibility that forced a complete rewrite of the history of technology. This was not a simple calendar, it was a portable bronze universe, a mathematical model of the heavens built from hand-cut metal. For decades after its initial discovery, the mechanism remained a beautiful enigma. It was clearly a machine of extraordinary complexity, but what exactly did it do and how did it work? The task of answering those questions fell to a passionate and persistent historian of science named Derek de Solla Price. He became the mechanism's most dedicated detective, spending over 20 years of his life trying to reconstruct its logic, gear by gear. Price was not just an archaeologist, he was a physicist who understood the mathematics of motion, and he brought a completely new perspective to the puzzle. He used every tool available to him, from simple calipers to early X-ray technology, to peer inside the calcified bronze without destroying it. What he saw confirmed his deepest suspicions. This was not a navigational tool or a simple teaching device. The arrangement of the gears was a physical embodiment of astronomical theory. In 1974, Price published a landmark paper titled "Gears from the Greeks." In it, he made a bold and definitive declaration. The Antikythera Mechanism, he argued, was nothing less than the world's first known analog computer. Think about that word, computer. We associate it with silicon chips and digital code, but at its heart, a computer is simply a machine that processes information according to a set of rules to produce a specific result. That is precisely what this bronze artifact did. By turning a hand crank on the side, you would set dozens of interlocking gears in motion. These gears were not random. They were precisely calculated to mirror the celestial cycles of the solar system. The central output was a series of pointers on those intricate dials. One pointer would show the position of the sun in the zodiac throughout the year. Another, more complex pointer, driven by that ingenious differential gear, would show the phase and position of the moon, accurately modeling its variable speed across the sky. But Price's model revealed an even more astonishing function. On the back of the device was a large spiral dial, which he identified as a 19-year lunar cycle called the Saros cycle. This was the key to the mechanism's most dramatic prediction, eclipses. By tracking the intricate dance of the sun and moon over this long period, the machine could indicate not just when an eclipse might occur, but the very hour it would happen, and even whether it would be solar or lunar. Imagine a Greek philosopher or a temple priest turning this crank. As the gears whirred, pointers would sweep across scales inscribed with the names of months and constellations. They could look into the future, reading off a date years ahead, and know that on a specific day, the moon would vanish from the sky or the sun would be swallowed by a dark shadow. This was not magic, it was mechanical computation of breathtaking ambition. Price's work finally gave the mechanism a voice. It was not just a collection of gears, it was a concrete manifestation of Greek astronomical knowledge, a clockwork universe built to hold time in your hands. Derek de Solla Price had given the world a blueprint, but the mechanism itself still held its deepest secrets close. The true quantum leap in understanding arrived a full century after its discovery, not with more brilliant deduction, but with a revolutionary new way of seeing. In 2005, an international team of scientists, historians, and astronomers formed the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project. Their goal was simple and audacious: to look inside the 2,000-year-old wreckage of gears without ever touching it. They brought to the Athens Museum a suite of technologies that would have seemed like pure magic to the sponge divers who first found it. The key tool was high-resolution X-ray tomography, a three-dimensional scanning technique originally developed for medical imaging. Think of it as a superpowered CT scan, the kind used to map the human brain, but calibrated for the dense, corroded layers of ancient bronze. For the first time, researchers could peer through the solid metal and marine concretion to see the internal architecture in stunning detail. They could digitally peel back the centuries, layer by virtual layer, revealing gears buried so deep inside the fragments that no one even knew they existed. The scans did more than just count gears. They revealed engineering of almost unimaginable precision. The team could now measure the exact number of teeth on each tiny wheel, some gears having as many as 223 teeth, all cut by hand with astonishing accuracy. These tooth counts were not arbitrary, they were the numerical code of the cosmos. Each ratio, like 127 teeth meshing with 32, was a physical equation, a gear train designed to replicate a specific astronomical cycle discovered by the Babylonians and Greeks. The scans confirmed the presence of the differential gear assembly and revealed even more sophisticated planetary mechanisms that Price could only theorize about. But the most profound revelation came from the surface, using a technique called polynomial texture mapping, which captures the subtlest surface variations under raking light. The team recovered the engraved text. Where before there were only faint scratches in the corrosion, now thousands of crisp Greek characters emerged from the bronze. This was the mechanism's long-lost voice. The inscriptions were not just labels, they were a detailed instruction manual and a philosophical guide. They named celestial bodies, explained the functions of dials, and even included a 2,000-year-old parapegma, or astronomical calendar, listing the risings and settings of important stars throughout the year. One poignant phrase recovered from the back cover seemed to capture the very spirit of the device. It read, "All spheres." With these new images, the Antikythera Mechanism transformed from a brilliant hypothesis into a tangible, comprehensible machine. We could finally read its manual and understand, gear by engraved tooth, how a turn of the crank made a model of the universe come to life. This engraved text was the key to the entire machine. As researchers painstakingly translated the tiny Greek letters, they were essentially reading a 2,000-year-old owner's manual. The inscriptions covered both the front and back plates, acting as labels for the dials and pointers, and providing crucial context for the cosmic cycles being modeled. One of the most immediate revelations was the clear use of two distinct calendar systems. The device tracked time using both the Egyptian calendar, which was a simple 365-day year, and the Greek civic calendar, which was based on lunar months and required complex intercalation or the insertion of extra months. The mechanism could seamlessly convert between them with a turn of its gears, a vital function for an ancient scholar comparing astronomical records from different cultures. More thrilling were the names that began to appear in the text. The word for Venus was clearly identified, and the word for Mercury was strongly suggested. This was the first direct evidence that the machine did not just track the sun and moon, but attempted to model the erratic wanderings of the planets as well, a task of vastly greater mechanical complexity. But perhaps the most evocative inscriptions were found on the back of the device, surrounding the spiral Saros dial used for predicting eclipses. Here, the text did not just list data, it described events. Next to predicted eclipse dates were short, ominous phrases like, "The sun will be darkened," or "The moon will vanish." Some notations even included the predicted color of an eclipse, which ancient astronomers linked to atmospheric conditions and, in their worldview, to omens. This transformed the mechanism from a cold calculator into a deeply cultural object. It was not merely a scientific instrument, it was a tool for navigating a universe where celestial events were intimately tied to human affairs, to the fate of kings and the fortune of harvests. The philosopher turning the crank was not just computing a date, he was reading a prophecy written in bronze and mathematics, a blend of precise observation and ancient belief that makes the Antikythera Mechanism not just a marvel of engineering, but a window into the very mind of its creator. The front face of the mechanism was its most direct interface with the cosmos. A single, central hand pointer, likely driven by the main input crank, swept around a grand, concentric display that merged two fundamental rhythms of time. The outer ring was divided into 365 days, marked with the months and days of the Egyptian civil calendar. This was the stable, solar heartbeat of the year, a simple and reliable system favored by astronomers for its predictability. But inside this ring lay something far more intricate, a spiral dial coiled like a bronze serpent. This was the Metonic cycle, a 19-year period encompassing 235 lunar months. The ancient Greeks had discovered that after this exact span, the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. This was the key to harmonizing the sun's year with the moon's month, a problem that had plagued calendar makers for centuries. As the user turned the crank, that central pointer would perform a slow, mesmerizing dance. It would march steadily through the days of the Egyptian year on the outer track, while simultaneously progressing along the inner spiral, marking the passage of each lunar month. With just a glance, you could see not only the exact date, but also the precise phase of the moon for that day, whether it was a slender crescent or a full, shining disk. This was not a simple month-to-month calendar. It was a multi-year almanac built in bronze. A priest planning a religious festival tied to the new moon, or a farmer wanting to know the best nights for harvesting by moonlight, could consult this machine and read the celestial schedule for years into the future. It transformed the abstract mathematical discovery of the Metonic cycle into a tangible, moving diagram, a cosmic clock where one rotation of the pointer represented nearly 2 decades of celestial harmony. But the back of the mechanism held its true predictive power. The upper dial was a grand spiral divided into 223 tiny compartments, each representing 1 lunar month. This is the Saros cycle, a celestial pattern known to ancient Babylonian astronomers. They observed that every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, the Sun, Earth, and Moon return to nearly the same relative geometry. An eclipse that happens today will be followed by a very similar eclipse 1 Saros cycle later. The genius of the mechanism was to automate this knowledge. As the user turned the crank, a pointer would crawl along this spiral track. When it reached a compartment marked with a tiny glyph of a sun or a moon that indicated a predicted eclipse window. The inscriptions next to these marks gave even more detail, noting the predicted time of day and the eclipse's likely character. It was a mechanical prophecy, calculating celestial shadows decades into the future. Yet the ancient engineers knew the Saros cycle was not perfect. That extra 8 hours in the cycle meant that an eclipse predicted for, say, morning in Greece would occur 8 hours later in the day after 1 Saros. Over 3 cycles, this offset adds up to a full day. So, nestled inside the Saros dial, they placed a smaller secondary dial called the exiligmos, meaning turn of the wheel. This triple Saros cycle, spanning 54 years, brought the timing of eclipses back to roughly the same hour and location on Earth. With this refinement, the machine's predictions became staggeringly precise. Think of the profound implication here. This was not a scholar consulting a clay tablet and performing complex arithmetic. This was a machine where the mathematics were physically built into the gear ratios. By simply advancing the crank, the user watched a pointer glide toward a future date, seeing the moment of cosmic alignment materialize in bronze. The Greeks did not just understand eclipse cycles, they engineered a universe in miniature to compute them, turning celestial mystery into a tangible mechanical certainty. That central dial did more than just mark the days and lunar months. Encircling it all was a final, crucial ring, one that connected the machine directly to the night sky, the Greek zodiac. This was not a simple decorative band of symbols. It was a precise 360-degree map of the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path through the constellations over the course of a year. Each of the 12 zodiac signs was carefully subdivided into degrees, creating a celestial ruler against which the sun and moon could be measured. And here is where the mechanism's engineering truly sang. Emerging from the center of the device were not 1 but 2 distinct pointers. One, likely a simple golden ball, represented the sun. Its motion was driven by a gear train that mirrored Earth's annual journey, causing it to complete one slow, stately circuit through the zodiac ring each year, moving from Aries into Taurus, then Gemini, and so on. But the moon's pointer was a masterpiece of mechanical compensation. The moon does not orbit Earth at a constant speed. Its path is elliptical, meaning it moves faster when closer to Earth and slower when farther away. To simply model the moon with a single, steady gear would produce a pointer that gradually fell out of sync with the real moon in the sky. The ancient engineers solved this with breathtaking ingenuity. They created a system where the moon's pointer was not driven directly, but through a clever assembly of gears, including that sophisticated differential. This assembly introduced a subtle speeding up and slowing down, a mechanical wobble that perfectly mimicked the moon's real, variable motion across the zodiac. So as you turn the crank, you would witness a miniature cosmic ballet. The golden sun pointer advanced steadily along the ring of constellations. Meanwhile, the moon pointer danced around it, sometimes catching up, sometimes falling behind, but always accurately reflecting the moon's true, irregular pace through the stars. With a glance, a user could see not just the moon's phase from the spiral dial, but its exact position in the heavens relative to the sun and the backdrop of fixed stars. This was a live, moving orrery of the Earth-Moon-Sun system. It transformed abstract astronomical tables into a dynamic, visual demonstration, allowing someone to literally see the relationship between the calendar, the zodiac, and the two most powerful lights in the sky, all synchronized by the quiet whir of ancient bronze gears. The sun and moon were just the beginning. The real astronomical challenge, the one that consumed the greatest minds of antiquity, was the erratic dance of the five wandering stars, the planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn did not follow the steady, predictable paths of the other lights in the sky. They would slow down, stop, and even reverse course in bewildering loops called retrograde motion. To model this with gears would require a mechanical genius far beyond a simple clockwork. For decades, scholars debated whether the Antikythera Mechanism even attempted this feat. The inscriptions provided the first tantalizing clue. Among the thousands of recovered characters were the Greek names for Venus and a strong suggestion of Mercury. This was not conclusive proof of a planetary display, but it was a powerful hint that the machine's creators were thinking on a cosmic scale. Then, the high-resolution scans revealed something astonishing on the main drive wheel, a large four-spoked gear at the heart of Fragment A. Around its edge were faint but precise pinholes arranged in a careful pattern. To a modern engineer, this looks like the mounting points for a lost assembly, a series of small planetary gears that would have been stacked on top of this central wheel. This is where the mystery deepens into pure detective work. No surviving gear fragment clearly belongs to such a system. It is a ghost in the machine, a void where an impossibly sophisticated piece of engineering once lived. Researchers like Michael Wright, who built a physical reconstruction, and Tony Freeth, who leads digital modeling, have proposed how it might have worked. They theorize a complex train of epicyclic gears, small wheels riding on larger wheels. This elegant solution, first mathematically described by the astronomer Hipparchus centuries earlier, could physically replicate the planet's puzzling retrograde loops. One small gear representing a planet would rotate as it traveled around a larger gear representing its orbit. From our earthly perspective, this combined motion would make the pointer on the dial slow, stop, and backtrack, just as the real planet does in the sky. The front of the mechanism, then, may have been a crowded, brilliant cosmos. Imagine 7 pointers emerging from the center, 1 for the sun, 1 for the moon, and 5 for the planets, all sweeping across that shared zodiac dial. As you turn the crank, this miniature universe would come alive, with Mars tracing its lazy loop and Venus shimmering in its swift orbit, a mechanical orrery predicting the positions of the entire known solar system. The bitter truth, however, is that this planetary display is the mechanism's greatest lost chapter. The gears are gone, likely corroded into dust or still buried in the seabed. We have the mounting points and the user manual that mentions the actors, but the most complex act of the play is missing. This absence fuels an ongoing, passionate debate among historians. Did the original machine truly have this full planetary system, or was it a planned feature left unfinished? Every new reconstruction is an attempt to answer that question, to solve a 2,000-year-old engineering puzzle with only the shadow of the solution left behind. But the mechanism's purpose extended far beyond the stars. On the lower back of the device, separate from the cosmic spirals, sat a simpler yet profoundly human dial. This was the Olympiad dial, a 4-year cycle tracking the greatest cultural events of the Greek world, the Panhellenic Games. Its scale was divided into 4 segments, each inscribed with the names of the major games, the crown games. The most famous, of course, was Olympia, the Olympic Games held in honor of Zeus. Then came the others, the Pythian Games at Delphi for Apollo, the Nemean Games for Zeus, and the Isthmian Games for Poseidon. As the main crank turned, a small pointer would advance year by year around this dial, indicating which set of games was to be held in that coming year. This was not a casual addition. It wove the sacred rhythm of athletic competition and religious festival directly into the fabric of the cosmic calendar. For the ancient Greeks, these events were not mere entertainment. They were pillars of society, times of sacred truce when warfare ceased, and all Greek city-states gathered in shared identity and devotion. By including this dial, the creator of the mechanism made a powerful statement. The same machine that could predict an eclipse of the moon could also tell you when the next Olympic torch would be lit. It connected the immutable cycles of the heavens to the celebrated rhythms of human endeavor. This tells us the device was never meant to be a purely scientific instrument locked in a philosopher's study. It was a practical, cultural tool. A wealthy patron or a temple official could use it to plan for both celestial and civic events. They could ensure that a religious observance tied to a specific lunar phase did not conflict with the Great Games, or perhaps even schedule an important political announcement to coincide with the gathering of all Greece. The Olympiad dial reveals a world where science, sport, and ritual were not separate categories, but threads in the same tapestry. Understanding the cosmos meant understanding your place within a society whose highest expressions were athletic excellence offered to the gods. The machine did not just model a universe of gears and planets. It modeled the complete life of a civilization, where the timing of a chariot race was as worthy of precise calculation as the path of the sun. The Olympiad dial connected the stars to human celebration, but the real miracle lies in how such a machine was built at all. This was not a one-off experiment, but the product of a lost industrial art. Consider the gear at the heart of the mechanism, a wheel with 223 triangular teeth. Each tooth is less than a millimeter wide, and the spacing between them is so precise that the accumulated error over the entire wheel is less than a 20th of a millimeter. This was not stamped out by a machine. It was cut by hand from a flat sheet of bronze, using nothing more than a saw, a file, and an incredible amount of patience. The craftsman would have begun by scribing perfect circles onto the metal, then using a complex template or a dividing engine, perhaps a simple plate with precisely spaced holes, to mark the position of every single tooth. One slip of the file, one misaligned mark, and the entire gear would fail to mesh, ruining the cosmic calculation. The assembly reveals even more subtle genius. The gears are not all the same thickness. They are carefully sized to manage torque and prevent binding. Axles are made of hand-forged iron, fitted into precisely drilled holes in the bronze plates. Tiny pins and cotter keys, some smaller than a grain of rice, hold everything together. This speaks of a workshop where a philosopher's mathematical theory met a master metalworker's lifetime of skill. We can picture a small, sunlit room in Rhodes or Alexandria, the air smelling of hot metal and oil. At one bench, an astronomer points to a diagram of lunar anomaly, explaining the needed gear ratio. At another, a craftsman squints, using a bow drill to create a pivot hole with almost impossible accuracy. They would have built prototypes in wood first, testing the complex trains of logic before committing the design to precious bronze. This was not a weekend project. A single mechanism likely represented years of collaborative effort, a fusion of abstract celestial geometry and tangible, calloused hand craftsmanship. It stands as a quiet rebuke to the idea that ancient technology was primitive. This was the Hellenistic period at its zenith, a time when the Library of Alexandria collected all known knowledge, and the engineering spirit turned that knowledge into physical reality. The Antikythera Mechanism is that spirit captured in bronze, a testament to the moment when humanity first tried to build a thinking machine from gears and ambition. Yet the question remains, who was the mind behind these gears? Who possessed the mathematical insight to encode the cosmos and the practical genius to forge it in bronze? The mechanism itself bears no signature, but history offers us a few compelling suspects, each a titan of ancient science. The first and most legendary candidate is Archimedes of Syracuse. A century before this ship sank, Archimedes was renowned not just for levers and bathtub exclamations, but for building extraordinary mechanical spheres. Cicero, the Roman writer, described a planetarium built by Archimedes that showed the motions of the sun, moon, and 5 planets, a device so exquisite it was carried as plunder to Rome after Syracuse fell. The parallels are uncanny, but the dates are a problem. Archimedes died in 212 before the Common Era, while the Antikythera Mechanism, based on the coins in the wreck, was likely built between 60 and 70 before the Common Era. Could it be a later copy of his design, a masterpiece based on his lost work? It is a tantalizing possibility, a ghost of Archimedes sailing the Aegean. A more precise fit comes from the island of Rhodes. Here, the astronomer Hipparchus worked in the 2nd century before the Common Era, and his fingerprints seem to be all over the machine's calculations. It was Hipparchus who first mathematically described the moon's elliptical orbit, that subtle speeding up and slowing down. The Antikythera Mechanism's brilliant differential gear is a physical model of Hipparchus's lunar theory. The device also uses the Babylonian eclipse cycle he championed. Rhodes was a famed center of astronomy and engineering, a likely home for such a hybrid workshop. The final suspect is Posidonius, a philosopher and scientist who ran a famous school on Rhodes just decades before the shipwreck. He was known to have built an astronomical sphere, and his student Cicero wrote about it. The ship carrying the mechanism was traveling from the Greek east toward Rome, and Rhodes was directly on that route. It is perfectly plausible that a device from Posidonius's circle was loaded onto that ill-fated vessel as a gift or a piece of prized intellectual property. So who was it? The pragmatic answer is that we will probably never know a single name. The Antikythera Mechanism feels less like the product of one isolated genius and more like the pinnacle of a long, collaborative tradition. It represents the culmination of centuries of Greek astronomical observation, Babylonian record-keeping, and Hellenistic engineering prowess. It emerged from a vibrant culture where philosophers did not just contemplate the heavens, they sought to replicate their motion with wheels and pins, believing that to understand the universe, one might first have to build a small, working model of it. The creator, then, is not just a person, but an entire era of mechanical philosophy made manifest in a single, breathtaking box of bronze. This machine was far more than a celestial calculator. To understand its true purpose, we must step into the worldview of its creators, a perspective where science, philosophy, and divinity were woven from the same thread. For the ancient Greeks, the cosmos was not a chaotic void, but a manifestation of divine reason, a perfect, orderly system they called the cosmos, a word that implies both beauty and arrangement. The heavens moved with a flawless mathematical rhythm, a harmony of the spheres sung by the planets themselves. The Antikythera Mechanism was a physical argument for this idea. It took the grand, invisible order of the universe and miniaturized it into a compact, comprehensible form. By turning the crank and watching the gears enact the precise cycles of the sun and moon, a user was not just getting a date, they were witnessing proof. They were seeing with their own eyes that the cosmos operated by knowable mechanical laws. It was a microcosm, a little universe in a box, built to demonstrate that the great universe outside was equally governed by logic and harmony. This transformed the device from a tool into a philosophical statement, a bronze affirmation of Greek ideals about a predictable, rational world. So who would use such an object and for what ends? One likely purpose was education. In the hands of a teacher, the mechanism would be an unparalleled demonstration. Instead of merely describing the complex motions of the planets or the pattern of eclipses with words and diagrams, the teacher could make the cosmos move. A student could watch the pointers advance, see the moon's pointer speed up and slow down, and grasp the concept of elliptical motion in an instant. It made abstract astronomical theory tangible. But its use almost certainly extended into the realm of what we would call astrology. In the ancient world, there was no sharp line between astronomy and astrology. The positions of the stars and planets were believed to influence events on Earth, from the fate of empires to the success of a harvest. The ability to predict celestial events, especially dramatic ones like eclipses, was a source of immense power and prestige. A priest or court advisor with this machine could forecast these potent omens, advising a king on when to wage war or when to perform a crucial sacrifice. It was a tool for navigating a world where the heavens spoke directly to human affairs. Finally, we must consider the object itself as a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The sheer cost and skill required to produce it were astronomical. The precise bronze work, the intricate gearing, the thousands of hours of labor all point to an object of immense value. It was without doubt a spectacular display of wealth and knowledge, likely created for a powerful patron, perhaps a Hellenistic king, a wealthy merchant, or a major temple. Owning such a device would signal more than just riches. It would proclaim a deep engagement with the highest intellectual currents of the age. It blended the art of the master metalworker with the science of the astronomer and the theology of the philosopher. In this single box, we see the pinnacle of Hellenistic culture, a civilization that sought not just to understand the universe, but to capture its elegant order in a beautiful, functioning artifact. The Antikythera Mechanism was a totem of that ambition, a silent teacher, a prophetic oracle, and a dazzling trophy, all turning together on the same perfectly crafted gears. This breathtaking object of knowledge was traveling on a ship of plunder. The vessel that carried the Antikythera Mechanism was no ordinary merchant trader. Its cargo tells a story of conquest and cultural appropriation. Alongside the corroded gears, divers recovered magnificent bronze statues, marble masterpieces, delicate glassware, and coins minted across the eastern Mediterranean. The most telling clues were those coins, which date the ship's final voyage to between 70 and 60 years before the Common Era. This was a pivotal moment in history. The Roman Republic was rapidly expanding eastward, swallowing up the wealthy, cultured Hellenistic kingdoms that had succeeded Alexander the Great. Roman generals and wealthy aristocrats developed an insatiable appetite for Greek art and artifacts, not just for personal luxury but as symbols of power. A leading theory suggests this ship was a dedicated loot vessel, its hold packed with the finest spoils from conquered Greek cities, islands like Rhodes or Pergamon, all destined for the markets and villas of Rome. The mechanism fits perfectly into this grim inventory. It was not merely a scientific instrument, it was the ultimate intellectual trophy. Imagine a Roman commander, after sacking a great library or a philosophical school, ordering his soldiers to carefully crate up this complex bronze device. He would not have understood its intricate functions, but he would have recognized its immense value. It represented the pinnacle of Greek wisdom, a tangible piece of their celebrated genius. Its worth was not in the weight of its bronze, but in the weight of the knowledge it contained. To bring such an object to Rome was to claim ownership of that knowledge itself, to display Hellenistic sophistication as a conquered commodity. There is a poignant historical irony in this journey. The ship was likely headed for a specific, spectacular destination, a triumphal parade. When a Roman general achieved a major military victory, he was granted a triumph, a grand procession through the streets of Rome. The parade would showcase spoils of war, exotic animals, and prisoners in chains. But it would also display captured art and scientific wonders to dazzle the Roman populace. It is entirely plausible the Antikythera Mechanism was destined for just such an event, perhaps for a triumph celebrating victories in the eastern provinces, maybe even for Julius Caesar himself, who was famously active in the region during this very period. Picture the scene: the bronze device, perhaps gleaming and fully functional, carried on a litter amidst statues and chests of gold. The crowds would have marveled at its turning gears, a mysterious clockwork oracle from a vanquished world. They would have seen a symbol of Roman dominance over even the most advanced secrets of their subjects. And then the sea intervened. Just off the treacherous coast of Antikythera, a sudden storm or a navigational error sent this vessel of conquest to the bottom. The ultimate symbol of Greek intellectual achievement, stolen as a prize of war, was reclaimed by the Mediterranean, hidden under layers of silt and silence for 2,000 years. The Romans sought to own Greek knowledge, but the sea decided to preserve it for a future that could finally understand it. The shipwreck preserved a single, stunning artifact, but its solitude raises a haunting question. If this technology was so advanced, why have we found only one? Where are the other Antikythera mechanisms? This singular discovery feels like finding a single smartphone in a medieval castle, a breathtaking anomaly that defies the historical record. The most likely answer is also the most tragic. Bronze was far too valuable to waste. Throughout history, when empires fell or tastes changed, complex metal objects were not stored in museums, they were melted down. A statue could be admired for its form, but a mysterious lump of gears, especially if its function was forgotten, would have been seen as raw material. In times of war or economic hardship, thousands of such devices could have been fed into furnaces to become coins, weapons, or simpler tools. Their intellectual value was invisible, their bronze content was immediate cash. Furthermore, these were not mass-produced items. Each mechanism represented years of labor by teams of specialized craftsmen and astronomers, making them astronomically expensive. They were likely owned only by the wealthiest patrons, royal courts, or major temples, a tiny handful in a world of millions. When those centers of power collapsed, their rarest treasures were the most vulnerable. The cultural shift that followed the mechanism's era also conspired against its survival. The Roman Empire, which ultimately absorbed the Hellenistic world, was famously practical. They admired Greek art and philosophy, but their engineering genius was directed toward aqueducts, roads, and siege weapons, not toward building intricate models of cosmic theory. The deep, abstract curiosity that fueled such devices began to fade from the mainstream. Later, with the rise of Christianity, the philosophical framework that saw the cosmos as a divine, mechanical system shifted. The Church Fathers often viewed complex mechanical models of the heavens with deep suspicion, associating them with pagan astrology or even magic. Knowledge of how to build them, passed down in small, specialized workshops, would have been lost within a few generations, a forgotten craft. This explains why we have many later, simpler devices like astrolabes, which served a clear, practical navigational purpose for centuries. The Antikythera mechanism had no such obvious utility. It was a philosophical instrument, a luxury of inquiry. Its survival was a fluke of geology and salt water, a one-in-a-million chance that a ship carrying this pinnacle of technology sank in just the right spot, was buried in protective silt, and was found by people who could eventually see it for what it was. Its loneliness is not proof it was the only one, but a stark reminder of how fragile the highest achievements of any civilization can be, how easily a great idea can be reduced to scrap metal by the relentless tide of time. The silence of those lost gears was a challenge modern scientists could not resist. If the original was shattered and incomplete, the only way to truly understand it was to build it again, piece by piece. This quest to resurrect the Antikythera mechanism has become a parallel story of modern ingenuity, a global effort to reverse engineer a 2,000-year-old computer. Among the pioneers was Michael Wright, a curator at London's Science Museum. In the 1990s, long before the high-tech scans, Wright began a painstaking physical reconstruction based on meticulous measurements and Derek de Solla Price's theories. His workshop was a world of hand tools and patience, mirroring the ancient craftsmen. He hand-cut brass gears, filing each tooth to match the surviving fragments. His model was the first to propose a comprehensive planetary system on the front, a bold vision of what the complete machine might have been. When he turned the crank on his creation, it was a revelation. For the first time in perhaps 2 millennia, the pointers began their dance across the zodiac, the moon's pointer speeding and slowing with that elegant mechanical wobble. Wright's model was not just a replica, it was a hypothesis in motion, proving that the theoretical gear trains could actually function as a coherent physical machine. The digital age brought an even more powerful form of resurrection. The Antikythera Mechanism research project, after their groundbreaking scans, did not stop at simply looking. They used the data to create exquisitely detailed digital models. Every gear tooth, every fragment of inscribed text was mapped in 3 dimensions. This allowed them to run virtual simulations, testing thousands of possible gear arrangements against the known astronomical cycles. It was like solving a monumental puzzle with the computer trying every combination. Their digital reconstruction answered questions a physical model could not. They could visualize the flow of torque through the system, identify points of stress, and see how errors in one gear would propagate through the entire calculation. One of their most stunning discoveries was confirming the ancient Greek use of a specific astronomical period for Venus, a number that appears in the inscriptions and matches Babylonian records. Their work turned the abstract scans into a living, clicking virtual artifact that anyone could explore online, peeling back its layers with a click. The ultimate test, however, remains in the physical world. Today, several teams around the globe have built full-scale, functioning models using the latest research. These are not static museum displays, they are working machines. Watch a video of one in operation, and the ancient genius becomes viscerally clear. You hear the soft, precise click of bronze teeth engaging. You see the pointers, often tipped with tiny carved symbols of the sun and moon, begin their slow procession. The lunar pointer does not move smoothly. It has a subtle, perceptible pulse, a visual representation of Hipparchus's lunar theory made real. The eclipse prediction pointer crawls along its spiral, pausing at the glyphs marking celestial shadows years in the future. These reconstructions resolve lingering debates through sheer mechanics. They prove which proposed gear trains work without binding and which are impossible. They show that the device, for all its complexity, is remarkably user-friendly. A slow turn of the main crank is all it takes to set the entire cosmos in motion. Building these models has revealed the mechanism's elegant imperfections too. The ancient craftsmen, for all their skill, made tiny errors. A gear might be off by a tooth or two, a slight miscalculation that would accumulate over decades. These flaws are not failures, they are human fingerprints, reminding us that this was a product of hands and minds, not an abstract, perfect idea. Holding a modern reconstruction, or even watching its gears turn, closes a 2,000-year loop. It transforms the mechanism from a fragmented archaeological wonder into a testament to shared human curiosity. We are not just looking at a relic, we are witnessing a conversation across time where modern engineers, using computer-aided design and precision machining, finally answer the call of those ancient craftsmen in their sunlit workshop, proving that their bronze universe still works. That single, sunken machine forces us to redraw the entire family tree of technology. For generations, the story of complex machinery followed a neat, linear path. We believed precision gearing emerged in medieval clock towers, reached a peak with 18th century automata, and then evolved into the mechanical calculators of the 19th century, which finally gave birth to the electronic computer. The Antikythera Mechanism shatters that timeline. It proves that the core concepts of analog computation, of using physical components to model mathematical problems, were not born in the workshops of Renaissance Europe, but in the ancient Mediterranean over a millennium earlier. This was not a primitive prototype, it was a fully realized, sophisticated computer that simply happened to be made of bronze instead of silicon. Its very existence rewrites history, inserting a brilliant, forgotten chapter at the very beginning of the book of engineering. The mechanism stands as a powerful reminder that technological progress is not a straight, inevitable march forward. It is a story of brilliant flashes that sometimes fade, of knowledge gained, lost, and rediscovered. This device represents a peak that was not surpassed for over 1,000 years. Its legacy is not in a continuous line of copies, but in the profound idea it embodies, the idea that the universe operates on rules that can be physically modeled and mechanically calculated. That idea went dormant, buried under the silt of Antikythera and the shifting sands of history, but it never truly died. It was the seed of a revolution that would bloom much later. We can trace this legacy in two specific, astonishing ways. First, consider that differential gear, the assembly that modeled the moon's variable speed. Before its discovery in the mechanism, the invention of the differential was credited to clockmakers in the 1600s, and its industrial application was perfected for the automobile in the 1800s. The differential in your car allows the wheels to turn at different speeds when you take a corner, a crucial piece of mechanical logic. The ancient Greeks, it turns out, had already invented this logic, not for navigating roads, but for navigating the elliptical path of the moon. The principle is identical, a beautiful example of how a solution to a celestial problem prefigured a solution to a terrestrial one, separated by centuries. Second, and more profound, is the mechanism's programmability. It was not a single-purpose tool. By setting its dials to a specific starting date, a user was essentially inputting data. The fixed gear ratios then acted as its permanent programming, its built-in algorithm. When the crank was turned, the machine processed that input through its physical logic and produced an output, the predicted positions of celestial bodies and events years into the future. This is the fundamental definition of a computer: input, processing, output. The Antikythera mechanism was not just a clock or a calendar, it was a dedicated astronomical computer. Its purpose was to calculate, to answer specific, complex questions about the future state of the cosmos. In this way, it is a direct conceptual ancestor to Charles Babbage's 19th century difference engine, a steam-powered mechanical computer designed to calculate mathematical tables. Babbage's world had no knowledge of the ancient device salvaged from the Aegean, yet both inventors arrived at the same powerful concept: to automate complex calculation with geared machinery. The mechanism proves this concept is not modern, it is timeless. It forces us to see the history of computation not as a sudden 20th century explosion, but as a long arc with a brilliant early peak in antiquity, a long period of forgetting, and a glorious reinvention. The Antikythera mechanism was a dead end only in the sense that its specific technical tradition was lost. The idea it represented, the dream of a thinking machine, was merely sleeping, waiting for a new age to reawaken it and carry it forward to reshape the world. The machine's reconstruction is a triumph, yet its full blueprint is still missing. We have solved the central mystery of what it was, but countless tantalizing questions linger at the edges of our understanding. Take the front face, for instance. Our models show a beautiful array of pointers for the sun, moon, and planets moving across the zodiac, but was that the entire display? Some researchers suggest there may have been additional rotating rings or even small, intricate models showing the phases of the moon as a tiny, changing silver ball. The exact arrangement and number of those planetary pointers is still hotly debated, a puzzle we are trying to solve with only a handful of mounting holes and cryptic inscriptions as clues. The planetary gear system itself is the grandest enigma. We know the concept of epicyclic gearing could make a pointer perform the retrograde loop, but the precise mechanical design that fit within the known fragments is a challenge that occupies mathematicians and engineers to this day. Every new reconstruction proposes a slightly different solution, a new arrangement of those lost wheels, and then there are the whispers of other functions. The ancient Greeks were keen observers of the natural world. Could this machine, built by a maritime culture, have also predicted the tides? While the Mediterranean has minimal tides, the builders were certainly aware of them from trade with the Atlantic. Some of the inscribed cycles might relate to lunar nodes that influence tidal patterns, adding another layer of practical purpose to this cosmic calculator. To answer these questions, the research has never stopped. The Antikythera Mechanism research project continues to employ ever more advanced technology. They are now using high-energy X-rays and three-dimensional X-ray microscopy, techniques that can peer into the innermost core of the corroded lumps and distinguish between different metals in the alloy. The goal is to detect the ghostly imprints of long-vanished gears pressed into the corrosion, like finding the fossil of a leaf in stone. They are also applying sophisticated texture analysis and reflectance transformation imaging to the inscriptions, hoping to recover more letters from areas once thought blank. Every new character could be a verb that explains a function or a noun that names a lost component. This is not archaeology frozen in a museum case. It is a dynamic, ongoing detective story. New papers are published regularly, proposing fresh interpretations of a gear ratio or a fragment of text. Independent scholars and enthusiasts around the world run digital simulations, testing new theories about the gear trains. The mechanism, in a very real sense, is still being excavated, not from the seabed but from the data. Each year seems to bring a small revelation, a subtle shift in our understanding. Perhaps the most exciting possibility is that the answers are still out there, buried. The Antikythera wreck site itself has been revisited with modern submersibles and metal detectors. The seabed is a chaotic jumble, and the original salvage a century ago was rushed and crude. It is entirely possible that other fragments of the mechanism, or even parts of a second device, remain hidden under the sand. A single new gear or a plate with a clear inscription could resolve decades of debate overnight. This is why the Antikythera Mechanism feels so alive. It is not a closed book but an open invitation. It reminds us that history is not a list of settled facts but a conversation. We are still talking to this ancient computer, and with every new technological lens we apply, it has a little more to say. The mystery of its gears has long since escaped the lecture hall, capturing a far wider audience. You can find the Antikythera Mechanism starring in major television documentaries, its intricate fragments rendered in gleaming computer animation. It fuels plots in historical fiction and science fiction novels, often cast as a secret device that held advanced knowledge. It even appears as a puzzle or artifact in popular video games, a coveted relic that unlocks hidden powers or lost maps. This journey into popular culture is fascinating because it reveals what this object truly represents for us today. On one level, it is the ultimate symbol of lost knowledge. The idea that an ancient civilization possessed a technology so advanced, only for it to vanish for a millennium, taps into a deep human fascination with forgotten wisdom and fallen empires. It is a concrete, physical proof that history is not a simple story of linear progress. We look at those corroded gears and are forced to confront a humbling truth. The ancient world was capable of sophistication we never imagined, and entire chapters of human ingenuity can be erased by time, war, or simply a change in priorities. This makes the mechanism a powerful corrective to our assumptions. We often picture classical antiquity as a world of marble columns and toga-clad philosophers, not precision engineering. The device shatters that romanticized view, replacing it with something more compelling, a society where abstract mathematics and hands-on metalworking converge to build a model of the universe. It forces us to re-evaluate every other ancient artifact, to wonder what other secrets might be hiding in plain sight, dismissed as simple tools or decorations. But perhaps its deepest resonance is as a tantalizing what-if for the entire history of science. That single shipwreck holds a profound alternate timeline. What if this technology had not been lost? What if the knowledge of complex gearing and mechanical computation had been passed down, refined, and built upon through the centuries? Could the scientific revolution have happened 1,000 years earlier? The mechanism is not just a relic, it is a ghost of a potential future that never was, a road not taken by technology. It sparks our imagination because it is real. This is not a legend like Atlantis or a fictional ancient astronaut theory. It is a tangible object in a museum case, yet it feels like science fiction. That combination of undeniable reality and mind-bending implication is why it endures in our stories. It reminds us that the past is not a static backdrop, but a dynamic, surprising place, and that the greatest discoveries often come from the gaps in our understanding, from the questions we are only just learning how to ask. This is a story told not in shouts but in whispers. Across the centuries, the loudest historical mysteries often roar with fantasy: the sunken continent of Atlantis, the towering pyramids built by visitors from the stars, narratives powered by grand conspiracies and lost super civilizations. They are thrilling, but they share a common thread. They ask us to believe in something external, something other, a force beyond our ancestors' own capabilities. The Antikythera Mechanism speaks in a completely different register. Its voice is the soft scrape of a bronze file, the faint trace of Greek ink on metal, the patient click of a gear tooth engaging with another. It is a mystery built not from myth, but from the quiet, painstaking accumulation of evidence, a single data point at a time. There is no need to invent ancient astronauts or forgotten technologies here. The truth, as it has slowly emerged from the silt and the X-ray scans, is more astonishing precisely because it is real. This machine was built by human hands, guided by human minds that observed, calculated, and crafted with a sophistication we are only now coming to fully appreciate. That is what makes it a soft-voiced mystery. Its power lies not in what it denies about human history, but in what it profoundly affirms. Choosing to listen to this whisper over the roar leads us to a more meaningful connection. When we marvel at a fictional Atlantis, we are passive consumers of a spectacle. But when we follow the trail of the Antikythera Mechanism, from a diver's panicked report of statues on the seabed to the digital model of its differential gear, we become active participants in the same story. We are joining the long chain of curiosity that stretches back to its creators. We are using our own tools, our tomography and polynomial texture mapping, to answer the questions their bronze and mathematics posed. This is not a story of separation, of us versus a magical past. It is a story of continuity. It tells us that the drive to understand the universe, to model its workings and hold its rhythms in our hands, is a deeply human impulse, one that connected a philosopher in Rhodes to a programmer in a modern lab. The mechanism's silent, intricate truth offers a gift far greater than any fantasy, a genuine, tangible link to the intellect and ambition of our ancestors. It proves they were not so different from us. They too built machines to think with, and in their quiet, corroded gears we can still hear the echo of their wonder. That quiet click of bronze gears is a sound of profound fragility. We hold the Antikythera Mechanism in such awe because it is a miracle it survived at all, a single data point from a lost continent of knowledge. This one device, preserved by a shipwreck and 2,000 years of silt, illuminates a terrifying historical truth. Entire traditions of science and engineering can vanish, leaving barely a whisper behind. For every masterpiece that endures, how many were melted down for scrap, burned in a library fire, or simply forgotten when the culture that created them fell? The mechanism is not an isolated wonder. It is a ghost, the sole surviving witness to what was likely a rich and sophisticated craft of building mechanical models of the cosmos. We can infer there were workshops, apprenticeships, and textbooks full of gear diagrams, all of which evaporated into history. This loss was not a sudden catastrophe, but a slow fade. As the political and intellectual centers of the Hellenistic world crumbled, the specialized knowledge required to design and build such intricate machines became irrelevant, then obscure, and finally mythical. The very practicality that made bronze so valuable ensured its own destruction, as later generations saw only raw metal in these complex philosophical instruments. So we are left with a haunting question: what else did they know? What other devices, equally brilliant, were lost to the furnace of time? Perhaps they built mechanical astrolabes that mapped the stars in real time, or hydraulic computers that modeled the tides of distant oceans. We have hints in ancient texts of automated theaters and ingenious water clocks, but the physical proof is gone. The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to confront the fact that history is written not by what was, but by what accidentally endured. Our entire understanding of ancient technological capability was, for a century, completely wrong, simply because the evidence lay hidden under the sea. This shifts our perspective on our own civilization. We live in an age of digital abundance where we believe our knowledge is permanently saved on servers and in cloud archives. But data formats become obsolete, storage media decay, and the very languages we code in may one day be unreadable. The lesson of the corroded bronze gears is that no knowledge is truly permanent unless it is actively preserved, understood, and passed on. It is a humbling reminder that our own legacy, all our science and art, is just as vulnerable to the silent, patient erosion of time. The true value of this ancient computer may not be in the eclipses it predicted, but in the future it asks us to consider: what are we doing to ensure that our greatest ideas do not suffer the same silent fate? That lump of coral and bronze on a museum shelf held a silent revolution. We have followed its journey from a sponge diver's startled discovery to its recognition as the world's first known computer, a machine that calculated eclipses, modeled the wandering planets, and harmonized the sacred games with the motions of the moon. It was a calendar, an oracle, and a portable bronze universe all in one. The true legacy of the Antikythera Mechanism lies not in the answers it provides, but in the questions it forces us to ask about history itself. For over a century, it sat quietly challenging our most basic assumptions about technological progress and ancient capability. It whispers that the past was far more sophisticated, more curious, and more ingeniously mechanical than we ever dared to believe. This soft voice from the deep, this single survivor from a sunken ship of plunder, continues to speak volumes. It tells us that genius is not the property of any one era, but a thread woven through the entire human story, waiting to be rediscovered in the quiet click of 2,000-year-old gears. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is what still lies undiscovered. We have followed the trail of this one extraordinary device, but the ancient world was vast, and the ocean floor is a deep, dark museum. What other marvels of bronze and intellect are waiting in the silt, holding secrets we have not yet thought to ask? I would love to hear what you think. In the comments below, tell me what ancient mystery captures your imagination. Do you believe we will ever find another device like the Antikythera Mechanism, or was it truly a singular masterpiece of its age? If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's quietest revolution, consider subscribing. Together, we can explore more puzzles where a single artifact can rewrite everything we thought we knew. For now, picture this not as a relic in a case, but as it was meant to be seen. In your mind's eye, watch the reconstruction turn. See the pointers sweep across the dials of zodiac and calendar. Listen for the soft, precise click of each bronze tooth engaging, a sound older than empires as it calculates the endless dance of the heavens. It is more than a machine. It is a testament carved in metal to a drive that has never faded: the human need to reach into the cosmos, to grasp its rhythms, and to build a small, working model of infinity.